Hello. Today, for the purpose of this demonstration, I want to show you how I would tackle trees to get texture. I've already prepared my paper with a little bit of a colour wash on just to knock back the white so it's not quite as stark. It's not about a finished painting today, it's just to show you how you can use watercolours and let it flow and do what watercolours should do, run down. I want to tilt my paper a little bit, so I'm using ad-lib, my tape, and I'm going to wet again where I've worked out where my trees are going to be. It's drawn in lightly, so I'm taking a big wash brush and starting at the top, just wetting it down, letting the water, it's very, very wet. There's lots of little branches coming off of this tree trunk, and I'm just joining them in for the moment, but I can paint them in later properly. I will also do the other side at this moment, just so that it's soaking into the paper. The big brush I'm going to set to one side, and I'll go down to the size 10. And this holds enough pigment in there with an ice point so I can work my painting. If I start first of all by putting on a little bit of the warmer colour, just to set that off a little bit. I'm going to use 4 paints today. I have already put on the French ultramarine blue. Then I used the yellow ochre just to give a bit of warmth into this. And I've got 2 main colours, which are burnt sienna and Van Dyke brown. I like the SAA ones because they're quite strong colours and they go a long way. So I use these quite often in my demonstrations. I'm starting with a little bit on this side of this tree. And again, this is one of my warm colours. So letting it run down the paper. If it doesn't run fast enough, just pop some more water onto it. I need to tilt the board a little bit sometimes. So that's what I've just done, so that that can tilt across that way, but also tilt down that way as well. But going back to where I was, putting some more of warmth onto this, I can start to bring out the branches. Now, branches always grow out of a tree, as you know. So I start by putting my brush on quite hard, firm, pressing down, and then lifting off as I go along the branch. So to a very fine point at that point. Said it twice, but that's it. Then if you keep working around your picture that way, growing the branches out with this warmer colour, sometimes you do need to come back in the other way if you're right-handed, left-handed, think about it, which way you want to be. And growing all these branches. And they need to be very flexible because it's organic, isn't it, a tree? So you may have drawn it in one way, and then as you're working you think, oh, actually, it doesn't look quite right, so I'll adjust that picture. So I'm just putting in the branches here, and we will have twigs coming off the branches eventually, which are the fine bits that you always have at the end of the branch. The next thing I do is pick up some of the burnt umber. I'm now going to tilt the board to one side, starting at the top again, and just lightly touching it with my watercolour brush, bringing it down the edges of this lovely wet painting. You'll see that these colours are naturally blending in and running together. So I must work as fast as I can because it's wet. So I want to now put in some contrast to that side as well. So I'll put that in whilst I'm working on the other side. Put some shadow under this branch as well, just to... This is where I'm going to tilt the board so that it's on an angle and tilted that way as well. Taking up the dark Van Dyke brown. Not necessarily a straight line down, but this is a fun bit where you start to see texture and character come into something. I'm using the French ultramarine now, also tilting the board. You can see it's running around a little bit there, but I want to keep that darkness on that side. This is where I'm mixing it into the palette, whereas before it was mixing on the paper. So to marry those colours together so that it's not a complete blue, which would have looked a bit false, I've just mixed it slightly in the palette. I'm also using a thicker pigment at this point and tilting again so that I get a real run back. It's not running enough at this moment, so I'm going to put some clean water on and just let that can hopefully blend down. Yep. Now, if you're satisfied with the way that that has run across, you need to just leave it for a minute and start on the other side quickly. You have to get that back to that whilst it's still wet when you want to use your rigger brush, which I will do, to put some of the fine branches in a second. So I just put one of the branches over this way to make it a little bit more of a painting. Although, as I said earlier, this is a technique, not necessarily a finished item. So same principle, roughly. I had that warmer colour on. I'm taking some burnt sienna now, and I'm putting it on quite thick. It's very, very strong, this burnt sienna, but it's lovely when it's mixed with other paints, either in the palette or on the painting itself. So this one, we use a touch more of the burnt umber, coming down that side, joining your branching. And the other thing is, don't be afraid of mixing colours from your tree trunk. You'll find that branches, if you look at them, they have all sorts of different shades on them. Often they're quite blue, sometimes they're green. Very rarely is a tree just brown. And to start to use the tip of the brush and bring out some of the small, finer branches that you find before we use the rigger. At that point, I want to just do the final bits, which would be to pick up the Van Dyke brown with a touch of the ultramarine. This is mixing it on the palette. I have terminologies which I use, and it's you can have gravy, and it's quite loose and wet. You can have cream, which is the texture and consistency I'm using at the moment with this brush, or you can have porridge, and we don't like to go there. But this is a rigger size 2, I think, and I'm putting in now into the damp paper some lines that might suggest where the bark of the tree is, where it's growing. But mainly we need to get some of the branches in, which I'll do with a mix of the burnt sienna. The rigger's lovely. You put it on, join it from a branch, pull it out into the finest lines, which will give you the really tiny little twigs at the end of a picture. Picking up again the Van Dyke brown, just putting in a bit more of the texture. And again, I want to use number 10 because I need to put some more water on there. And I might do it in that way, where just splattering it with water. This is a little bit like, you know, when you see puddles at the side of the road and the rain lands in the puddle, which has got oil in it, and it has that lovely way of running around the paper. So you can see one's going to run off here. So what I'm going to do is take that, watching it carefully, dripping down a little bit, great, like that. And then I'm going to encourage that one to go that way as well. And finally, we need to just put some more detail into this side. I often like to paint silver birch trees, and this is a great way of doing them because you can get all that lovely shine that you get on a silver birch tree. I think these are beech trees actually. I just feel as though I want to put a little bit more into this picture, so I'm twisting it and tilting it. When I'm painting or demonstrating in my classes, I like to encourage the students to be themselves and not to try and copy either myself or anyone else. One of the favourite techniques of the majority of artists as well is to use a brush to put on leaves by using the spattering technique. You can do it with a toothbrush, you can do it with your hand this way, or you can actually tap it onto a harder surface. So hopefully at the end of this demonstration you will feel like picking up your brushes and perhaps having a go at painting something, enjoying yourself, and maybe one of these days you might want to come along to my class. So if you are interested, then you can find any of my paintings and results on the webpage. Thanks very much for watching.